So we are going to, we're going to, are they on their way? Okay. This hearing will now come to order. Ms. Loghead, will you please call the next witness for public
Keisha Hudson,
testimony?
Chief Defender.
Got the Northeast Caucus over there taking care of business. I like that. Ms. Hudson, just please state your title for the record and please begin your testimony.
Good afternoon, Council President and City Council. Keisha Hudson, Chief Defender, the Defender Association of Philadelphia. Council President Johnson, members of City Council, again, I'm the Chief Defender of the Defender Association of Philadelphia, and I'm pleased today to provide testimony on the fiscal 2025 operating budget for the Defender Association of Philadelphia. We are requesting a total budget increase of $15 million. The details about how we would use these resources is laid out in our comprehensive written testimony, accompanied by a short 5-page slide presentation. Today, I'm just going to spend a few moments giving you an overview of our budget request and give you the opportunity to ask any questions you have of me about our work. The majority of my requested budget increase will be directed to our continued efforts to interrupt and dismantle what we call the womb to prison pipeline, a long-term investment that aligns with the mayor's vision to make Philadelphia the safest big city in America. As we all know, Philadelphia's child welfare system is particularly aggressive, removing predominantly Black and brown children from their homes at or near the highest rate of any big city in the country. We are looking to add to our dependency and youth delinquency practice teams by bringing on 2 experienced education attorneys and 2 housing navigators to serve our youth, particularly our older youth, both again in the dependency and delinquency system. We have to ensure that our older youth involved in these systems are able to navigate the challenging processes in both the education and housing systems. According to our partners at the Education Law Center, dependency and justice-involved students need strong advocates because they are among the most educationally underserved of all student populations. They're more likely to change schools, be placed in inappropriate classes, and fail to receive the special education and other services that they need. Our youth in the juvenile justice system are more likely to have unmet special education needs and a history of truancy. As a result of multiple school changes and placement in on-ground schools, students who are justice involved often fall through the cracks. Our education lawyers will be critical for representing youth in the dependency system, representing youth in expulsion proceedings, which have become increasingly common. Many children are now receiving permanent expulsion from school, and many are mandated to be out of school for an entire school year, undermining their ability to graduate. Education lawyers are also important for the legal representation of youth in special education, due process proceedings, and will be important to coordinate with placement facilities to ensure that our children coming back from placement are getting the appropriate education services. We're also asking for 2 housing navigators. The children and youth who remain longest in foster care or whose last placement was a group setting are the least likely to ever become part of a permanent family. This lack of support leads to a greater likelihood of homelessness. The housing navigators will be responsible for helping our youth access county services and community resources. Protecting our older youth clients with educational and housing supports will ease their transition into adulthood, but also provide meaningful connections to education, housing, and community that will reduce their chances of being arrested. What do we mean when we say the womb to prison pipeline? 24% of dependent children experience a juvenile arrest. We represent those children in the delinquency practice unit, which last year we represented 1,463 children. This unit currently has only 10 lawyers and 5 social workers. We know with our current staffing levels that we are unable to meet the needs of our clients, which is why we are asking for resources to increase our staff and social workers. The lion's share of the budget request would provide funding to hire 5 attorneys and 25 social workers, and so that every youth that we represent in that delinquency practice will have the benefit of an interdisciplinary legal team, which will include an attorney, social worker, and administrative staff. Our experience with our children entering the delinquency system tells us that they all need the assistance of a social worker, and currently we are not staffed to provide them with one. With this continued investment, we can connect our young people with the support that they need to avoid future entanglement with the delinquency system and avoid future involvement with the adult criminal justice system. This additional staff will also help us build our capacity to provide representation and social services to youth as diversionary opportunities for them to expand. I was pleased last year when I was listening to Commissioner Bethel's testimony that he has expressed a deep commitment to diverting our youth as early as possible at the point of police contact or using our juvenile access center. And we would very much appreciate coordinating with the city and other stakeholders, including the police and the DAO, to divert our youth. But we will need increased capacity to represent our youth clients in that realm. It will also lower our caseloads for our attorneys. In every unit at the Defenders Association currently, our attorneys are carrying more than twice the recommended caseload. This increased investment will also support efforts to safely reduce the PJJSC population by creating release plans for children housed there, and will better support our young people returning home from placement or detention. As Council is aware, there is overcrowding at the PJJSC. It has presented ongoing challenges for the facility and for our young clients housed there. While stakeholders have been working to reduce the daily detention population, it has consistently remained at or above capacity. Despite efforts to reduce the population, it remains a racial justice crisis. Let me repeat, it is a racial justice crisis that is impacting young Black males, who make up 85% of our young people who are housed in the detention center. Every month, middle school children routinely populate the JJSC, and there are children as young as 11 or 12 in our detention center every month. Recently, the majority of the children in detention are those who are awaiting resolution of their case. Around 113 children are being held pre-adjudication. They have not yet had a trial or any proceeding in family court. Investing in additional attorneys and social workers for our office will also enable us to work to secure release for these pre-adjudication children while they await resolution of their case. The second, I would say, priority of our budget ask has to go towards staff recruitment and retention initiatives. Following the COVID-19 crisis, our organization, like many city agencies, had vacancies to fill. In 2020 and 2021, we lost 98 defenders, and the majority of those defenders were seasoned, experienced trial attorneys. We are also hopeful that we can increase the diversity of our attorneys. We want our attorneys to reflect the client population that we represent. We are still at a time in American history where when we try to recruit Black and brown attorneys to our organization, we're often told that our salary, starting at $64,000, is simply not enough for them to pay their student loans and oftentimes for them to support their families. I have heard from countless prospective candidates that, Ms. Hudson, I'm the first person in my family to go to college, I'm the first person in my family to go to law school, I have responsibilities. And so we have a challenge recruiting and retaining Black and brown attorneys. To remain competitive with other city agencies, we want to invest in increasing our starting salary. As of today, our office public defenders start at $64,000. The district attorney's office attorneys start at $70,000. The law department solicitors start at $72,000. All three agencies, DAO Krasner, Solicitor Garcia, and myself have met and discussed the challenge of recruitment and retention, and we are aligned in an ask for starting salaries to be increased to $85,000 a year. This makes us competitive with New Jersey, where the starting salary is $75,000 a year, and at least for public defenders, where the starting salary in Baltimore is $85,000 a year. Solicitor Garcia will tell you that that starting salary is far and below what we are seeing in other public defender and solicitor and prosecutor agencies around the country. We simply cannot recruit and retain and sustain our attorney class on any diversity initiatives unless we get an increase in our salary. We do have a unionized attorney staff. They're unionized under the UAW. We have a collective bargaining agreement, and of course, any increase to our starting salary means that the salary has to be increased throughout our contract, per our contract. In conclusion, investing in the Defender Association is not just an investment in providing essential, constitutionally mandated legal counsel to people that are entangled in our justice system, but it's funding an effective community touchpoint that supports people and their need to succeed socially, educationally, and economically. Every time this body discusses people in the criminal justice system, every time we discuss bringing people into the criminal justice system, every time we have a new law, every time we have a new initiative, like the Kensington Initiative, we also have to address funding, not just for the other stakeholders, but for the Defender Association, that represents over 70% of the people in the city of Philadelphia. Investing in the defenders also ensures that we retain and recruit the people committed to serving the public good. We do appreciate the support you've given us over the years. Council has been incredibly supportive in our ability to increase staffing and support for our child advocacy units, but we do need additional resources. And now I will again rest on my testimony and our short slide presentation and take any questions that council might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Keisha. As always, thank you for your hard work and your dedication and taking a comprehensive approach in supporting those who need legal representation. And obviously, I'm a great fan of our great judiciary defense system that we have here in the good old United States of America. So you keep up the good work.
Thank you.
The defense never rests.
The defense never rests. Never rests.
Couple questions that I have. Obviously, some key things that you hit in terms of making sure that on a staffing level, as a city, we remain competitive to other cities, which is a no-brainer. I think this particular body has a value on making sure that we're being supportive of the Defenders Association, similar to how we support First Judicial District, similar to how we support our district attorney's office. And so we welcome your presentation. And I know my chairman of public safety have been a strong advocate of supporting and increasing your budget, similar to myself. And so a lot of things you talked about are very, very refreshing in terms of making sure people have strong representation. A couple questions that I had. In terms of the collaboration of the Public Defenders Association, do you work in partnership? Was there any synergy with the Department of Human Services, DHS, because you do a lot of work with juveniles, as well as First Judicial District? And I know they also have the juvenile unit with the juvenile probation officers and family court. What's the role do you and your team play from a synergy standpoint while you're supporting our young people? And the other part of my question is, what is the attorney-to-client ratio for adults as well as juveniles?
So to answer your first question, we represent the children who are coming into both the delinquency and dependency system, and we serve a very, very unique role. On the dependency system, I laud Commissioner Ali's vision of reducing the amount of children that are removed from homes and placed outside of the family setting in foster care or group placements. She's committed to addressing the racial inequity of that issue and the trauma that our children endure when they're removed from their families. The majority of our children are removed due to poverty and neglect. 2% of our clients are actually, that we represent, are subjected to physical or sexual abuse. The vast majority, we are talking about poverty underlying the fact that they are being removed. And so we are aligned with Commissioner Ali. We get funding through the Department of Human Services. For example, in one front, to do our mobile services visits with our clients who are placed throughout the city and state. So we're able to have our social workers and our attorneys visit our clients in different placements, both on dependency and delinquency side. If a client is placed in a foster home in a particular area that's outside the city, our social workers and attorneys can visit and maintain the relationship with that child. And we get funding through DHS to do that. We also, again, on the delinquency side, when our clients are placed as far away throughout the state, we have clients in Texas, get funding through the city, again, to be able to visit our clients in placement. would love to be able to have more alignment in terms of what happens once the child comes into the system. Again, the Defender Association is not involved pre-removal. We do not see that world. So we don't know what's happening prior to the child being removed. We, of course, will get that information after we take on representation of the child, but we would love to be more coordinated in pre-removal because we do think that that will help in family reunification down the road. We have a lot of work to do in the city of Philadelphia in terms of understanding what drives the removal of children. Substance abuse is, of course, part of the decision to remove a child, but we also need to focus on the fact that our clients do heal from substance abuse addiction, and efforts should be made to support them maintaining contact with their children, and eventually when they become sober and or overcome their addiction, have a plan to be able to get their children placed back with them. So we do collaborate, I would say, both in the pre-removal and post-removal, both the parents' lawyers who are represented by Community Legal Services, the Child Dependency Unit, our unit, the child advocates who represent the children, the DHS social workers that involve the CUAs. There are all of the other city agencies that come into bear would need to, I think, increase our collaboration with the outlook of what is in the best interest of the child. And in our mind, the best interest of the child is to do what we can to reunify. On the delinquency side, I will quickly say our attorneys are carrying significant caseload. Our attorneys right now in our juvenile unit are carrying in excess of 75 to 80 youth clients that they're representing at any one time. Again, as I said,
Per attorney?
Per attorney. We represented 1,400 children last year. We have 10 attorneys. And I have to also include the fact that the leadership of those units are carrying caseloads themselves. So they are not having the time to manage their staff. They are in court every single day with a full client caseload. So that's why we're asking for an increase in our attorney and social work staff.
And last question before I relax my time for my members. Talk about the role that your social workers play in terms of addressing the mental health and trauma that juveniles and adults clients may be impacted by just on your basic interacting with them as public defense counsel.
I often say every chance I can get, so I'll say it here again today, that public defenders are the most knowledgeable about what it will take to achieve public safety. And I say that in all seriousness because we have the beauty of attorney-client privilege, and we can have clients who trust us, and they do trust us, and will tell us things that they may not have told their parents or loved ones. And I can tell you, for every client we represent, I can see through looking at their history what we call missed interventions, whether that's a failure of the family surveillance system, whether that's a failure of community or education, where they're simply by their location, the neighborhood they live in, that child, if they were involved in the dependency system, I can see why they ended up coming through the both juvenile and adult system. So we know our clients well, and we know what solutions work. Right now, our social workers, we have 29 social workers for our adult population, and last year we represented 34,000 adults. We represented 4,000 children, we represented 34,000 adults. We have 29 social workers. We are not able to have any substantive touch points with our clients, so we do an incredible job of referring our clients, connecting them to services. But as you have heard from the agencies that have testified, we don't have enough treatment options for our clients, whether that's outpatient or inpatient. The wait list is long. If you sit in a courtroom any day of the week, you will see the PD, the DA, and the judge asking, well, when can we get this client into placement, or when can we get this client a bed for treatment? When they do, the treatment time is not long enough to address their need, and when they are released from treatment, there are no social service supports around housing or employment to help them maintain their sobriety or to help them from reverting back to their addiction. So I am asking for an increase in social workers, not just for the youth units. Some of those 25 social workers will be, for example, in response to the Kensington plan, because we want to be able to make sure that our clients are getting the services they need. We know that they need longer term treatment, and we know what happens that leads to their relapse. And that is they come back out, there's no housing, there's no continuation of support, and before long we see them coming back through the system again.
What's your role right now with the Kensington Strategy Plan?
We have not been a part of the plan. We have been invited to 2 meetings. Those meetings were at the invitation of DAO Krasner.
Okay. The chair recognizes Councilmember Mark Squilla.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Keisha, always for your support and collaboration, and attending those meetings with the DA Krasner, who we requested you to be there from those offices.
Thank you.
During the previous budget, there was a allocation and money for AMP Court. AMP Court was something that we supported immensely with your help and also DA Krasner. At that time, we were supposed to initiate it 2 days a week and then eventually go to 5 days a week. We still haven't been able to do that, and there's some challenges why that has been. But during your time as a defender, and do you see the use of courts like this to be able to get folks the help that they need so that we would see less multiple offenses or recidivism from these folks? And what other, we also talked about community court that we don't have, right, as an opportunity for diversionary options instead of charges that would be filed and or incarceration. Do you see both AMP court and or community court as possible options to help not only reduce the caseloads from a lot of the offenders, but also help the people who are the offenders?
Before I answer your question, I do have Sarah Allen here, the first assistant at the Defender Association of Philadelphia. Sarah Allen is our office expert on both AMP and actually staffed community court. I will say overall, yes, you know that our office is ready today without any additional investment to move up AMP from the 2 days a week to 5 days a week. But there are additional supports that are needed through that diversion program, and there is a role for community courts. But I would like to invite Sarah to talk about really what it looks like now and what we may need to be able to bring more clients through that diversionary program, which again does work.
Thank you.
Councilman Squilla. So we are currently staffing AMP Court 2 days a week. We were able to staff that expansion without any additional services. The partnerships that we have created through courts such as Community Court and AMP Court are integral to the success of the program. PHMC has been incredibly supportive in continuing to staff it with a full complement of social workers who are able to make real-time connections in the courtroom and do follow-up. So the Defender remains committed to staffing any problem-solving courts that we can create with the partners. We just have to figure out how to expand in a world where PAD exists. PAD did not exist in the time that we had community court, so anything that we can do to be supportive of problem-solving courts, I think, are a solution to some of the problems that are experienced in communities like Kensington.
Well, thank you for that, because I think it's important to hear from when you see things of enforcement or you see things that deal with offenders, what is our best way as a city to deal with those offenders in a way that doesn't hurt them long-term, but also understand that there are consequences, or at least a court process that may be a part of that offender's choice, not his choice particularly, but that there is a consequence at some point so that they know what we can do and give other opportunities. Now, if there's somebody who goes through, and the same thing with AMP and community court, you have like 30, 40 offenses of the same person, that's a whole different story. But the goal is that there's always people who make mistakes at times when they're young and sometimes not thinking about the consequences. There's other folks who'll be habitual offenders, but I think our goal is to weed out those folks and to make sure the people who make the mistakes at a young age, or even not at a young age, but make a mistake and get caught up in the system, they don't get tied up or then set back by the system. So any advice that you have, even with AMP as this rolls out and is hopefully being used more, but also if PAD somehow circumvents community court, or is there a room for a different process beside PAD?
I think the diversion courts that have been set up are very successful because of how rapidly the intervention occurs.
Right.
AMP is generally 3 to 5 days after arrest, so they don't have time to sort of get lost in the system again. So having the supports in place to have rapid intervention, I think, is the key. The other thing that I have found to be successful in these problem-solving courts is having consistency in the staffing, both attorneys, social workers, and the judge consistent in the process, because when you do have that person who falls off the wagon and comes back in, when everyone recognizes them when they walk through the doors and calls them out by name, it makes a huge impact.
Right.
So strong supports from the judiciary, strong supports from organizations like PHMC, and strong supports from the treatment providers in the community are what make the problem-solving courts successful.
And I agree, and they all need to be funded, right? So that's part of the challenge, and I see you bringing big guns in, like Mr. Gillison here, to also support your requests. But I just want to say thank you, and I do support the salaries, the starting salary increase, because I think it really is important. We as a city always said that, oh, we might make a little less money, but you got great benefits, you have a pension. But some of those things aren't the same anymore, right? So the salaries are key to attracting people, but not only attracting them, but you have to be able to retain them. We don't want to get people to come in, we don't want to get them trained, and then they go somewhere else.
Correct.
Right, so I think we really need to look at that as part of the budget request and making sure that we support that wholeheartedly moving forward. So, thank you.
Thank you for your support, Councilmember.
Do you want me to stay up here?
Thank you, Councilman. A quick question. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Quick question. Can you give us some sense of what the increase you're asking for will do for those ratios for your clients?
So for raising the starting salary for our attorneys?
Right, yes.
Yes. There is going to be a report that will be forthcoming from the University of Pennsylvania. Currently, we are staffed at the Defender Association. We are staffed at 250 attorneys. That report is going to say that as of today, the Defender Association is understaffed by 100 lawyers to keep up with recommended caseload and workload. So that's for future budget seasons. And I will share that report once it is released. It is a statewide report. It's going through each public defender agencies in the state to talk about their staffing and whether the staffing can accommodate the current caseload level. So our ability to increase, and I'll focus on our youth delinquency practice unit, because if we get 5 more attorneys and we add to that complement, we can bring cases down from the 75 or so that there are now to 50 or so cases, which again sounds like a lot, but every year we have to be able to start to make progress. And so it would be remarkable to have 5 experienced. We're not actually for the youth practice units. We're not looking for young attorneys right out of law school. We're looking for seasoned attorneys to come in who can handle a heavier caseload than a junior attorney who's still learning the practice.
So real quick, and I just want to ask this question. So if we're saying like for every 5, it'll reduce the caseload from 75 to 50, but the need is 100, you're saying we're understaffed by 100?
Across the organization for our caseload, the study will say the Defender Association is understaffed by 100 lawyers.
Is there a plan to get to that 100 in the near future?
We'll come back every year.
Okay, so
and
that's
I
the
always
plan.
come back. I always come with a robust asks. I text quite many of you at all hours of the day and night, just to remind you of that ask. And so we'll come back each year, again, with our data to show we need increased resources.
Okay. Because if you're getting 5,
For our youth practice, not adults.
oh, just for, okay, so I'm talking in total.
Yes, 5 for the youth practice. Part of
But
the
across the
budget,
board.
part of the budget ask will also be our fall class, which is coming on board in September, and that's 20 21,
Okay.
20 criminal attorneys and 6 attorneys for the dependency unit. So we will make a significant improvement on both the dependency and criminal adult unit with that class of 26.
Okay, all right, thank you very
Yes,
much.
thank you.
Chair recognizes Council Member, we changed some. Council Member O'Rourke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And hello, Chief, how are you?
Good
Thank you
afternoon.
for being here. Your testimony clearly states that you have not been involved in, and I think you mentioned earlier, any conversations about the triage and wellness centers, and that the anticipated needs of the neighborhood will quickly overwhelm the current referral system, which is alarming to our office for obvious reasons. I appreciate you trying to plan ahead, though, and make budget requests to expand your capacity for the new MDO initiatives. Since these requests are not premised on actual conversations that you've had with the MDO's office, and I'm sure that you're greatly anticipating having those, could you let us know what experience or information you are drawing on to make the 1.1 million requests for the Kensington plan? Please.
I did have the opportunity to meet with a member of Council Member Lozada's staff.
Good.
And there was my understanding from that conversation that if we have a triage and wellness center, that if people are going to be arrested, the law calls for arraignment within 12 to 24 hours. And so if someone, and the question was asked of the MDO this morning, if someone rejects treatment and there's a underlying basis for an arrest and charge, and those sometimes are going to be legal questions that can be challenged in court. But if at that moment, whether it's noon in the afternoon or 3 p.m. in the afternoon, if someone's going to say, I don't want treatment, charge me, send me to State Road, then you need a public defender within 12 to 24 hours for that arraignment, and you need a DA and you need a judge. And so my understanding is if arrest is on the table, then we have to be part of the conversation because it's going to be our staff that has to respond to whichever location, and that 1.1 million would just be to staff one location. If you're talking 2 or 3 or 4 locations to the city, then it's 1.1 million times 2 or 3 or 4. It's for 6 lawyers. Currently, we staff arraignment court 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But we would need additional attorneys to staff arraignment. If we're talking just one night a week, or are we talking 7 nights a week, then that 1.1 million will change. Or if are we talking 1 place or 5 places, then that 1.1 million would change. So it's a safe estimate based on what our understanding is. We don't know how many centers we're talking about. We don't know what our clients, what options they may have. I would implore this body to really think carefully about State Road being a part of that solution. We have serious concerns there. But what happens to that client who wants to go forward and say, put me in the jail and I'm going to try my case, or I was wrongfully arrested or wrongfully searched, and want to challenge that case? That is their right.
Thank you. Safely decarcerating the Philadelphia Juvenile Justice Services Center is a top-line goal for this coming year. Interestingly enough, at the same time that a federal monitor is saying that we need to decarcerate our jails, which I feel strongly about myself. Your testimony notes that over 60% of the youth inside the Juvenile Justice Center are awaiting trial, 60%, and that pre-adjudication youth are the target group for decarceration efforts. I'm curious to know what the key metrics for and steps toward accomplishing that goal are. What's the process for discerning which young people are awaiting trial, the people that are awaiting trial can go home? How will that effort scale up? Can you speak to that?
So every day we get a report that will show what we call alternatives to detention. And those alternatives to detention may say there are 30 monitors available today, house arrest monitors available today. There are various community centers, evening reporting centers, where a child who is waiting their adjudication hearing can report to, and of course, juvenile probation can then monitor and ensure that they're going to make their way to court. Those alternatives to detention on any day can be utilized to drastically reduce the pre-adjudication population. Our youth, for example, last year, 23% of our youth clients were arrested for carrying guns. This year, it's 14%. It's going down, but unfortunately, I think, the stakeholders, not including the Defender Association, but stakeholders in court, including the courts, may think that the safer place for Black boys, particularly at this time, is in detention. Or for them to be detained and not released to their families or back to their communities, or to utilize those alternatives to detention. Similarly, our youth, there are services available. Again, it's all partners have to come to the table and work to connect our pre-adjudication youth to those services. We have to be willing to surround them with resources and support. If we have a social worker assigned to every single child, we can ensure that that happens. But right now, with 5 social workers, we're focused on the youth that really are truly enmeshed in the system and in need of interventions. But every child should have a social worker, and I think we would better facilitate that pre-adjudication and alleviate the detention.
Beautiful.
Really quickly about on State Road, we propose that today we could identify 500 people that should not be on State Road, and we would be able to close an entire facility. And you could reallocate the guards from that facility, the detention center, to alleviate the staffing problems. I think currently the prison system is understaffed by 790 correctional officers, and that would greatly alleviate the staffing crisis, particularly with the independent monitor report and the federal litigation, where the city may be held in contempt if staffing is not brought up to standards. We think today we could identify 500 people you could safely send home, and these are not people carrying guns, these are not people committing violence. Bail, they're pre-trial, most of them, and bail is a function of poverty, and they're awaiting court, they have a presumption of innocence, and you could alleviate that staffing crisis if all stakeholders come together, and we look forward to working with Commissioner Resnick.
500 souls could come on
500
home.
souls.
Ain't that good news? Madam Chair, I heard the bill.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the questioning. Thank you for the response. That's, very, very good news, in my opinion, that if we were able to do that, we would be able to send some folks home who really shouldn't be there, but are there simply for the fact that they cannot afford what the bail is, what the bail's been called for. And in many cases, I think that it's probably not a large sum of money to most. And so, but I thank you for bringing that to our attention. One of the other things I wanted to ask you, though, is around the juvenile justice system, Juvenile Justice Center. And something that came to my attention not too long ago, I would say maybe the end of last year or a few months before that, but the idea that young folks who are being held awaiting trial are not giving any sort of credit, time served, for their waiting time. And they could be held for months, for years. What is your agency's role in addressing that particular matter?
There's a reason, we want to increase services. That is true. The time does not count. The clients who are in Texas asked to go because they knew the quicker they got to out-of-state placement, at least the time would count. And by law, the JJSC, under the Juvenile Act, right, kids have to be able to get services, during placement, and the JJSC is not equipped to be able to provide those services. I think if we invested some funding to ensure that both education services and other therapeutic services are brought into play at the JJSC, then we can address that issue through litigation, through the courts, bring it up to the upper courts to say the JJSC actually is a facility that offers treatment and rehabilitation services while the children are perhaps waiting for longer placement.
Right.
But as it stands right now, our children are not getting educated. They're being held for sometimes up to a year, and none of that counts. The other reason we're asking for an education lawyer is what happens when they either get out of the JJSC with a pre-adjudication and they have 30 or 60 or 90 days of displaced education. What happens when they try to go back to a school district in Philadelphia? It's not pretty what happens to those youth. They fall through the cracks, they become truant, and then if they're F-age, they stop
Go
going.
into the adult system, yeah.
And what happens to our children from longer term placement reinforcements with their education. But right now, our children are sitting, the ones who, and we represent all the children, including on any given day, 6 to 9 children who are just there on dependency, for dependency reasons. But the children that we represent on a variety of charges, right, are not getting education or any services at the moment.
Well, I can only say that it's outrageous, and, the work that you all are doing is so very important. I'm happy to fully support your budget request.
you.
And I just think that, we just can't keep saying that we want change, we want things to be better, we want our young people to have opportunities and not to address this in any way, shape, or form, which is, what's been happening for a very long time, so.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Absolutely. Chair recognizes Councilmember Landau.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I want to start by echoing the words of our Madam Chair right now, that the work of the Defender Association is so essential to what we're doing in Philadelphia. And what I love, what I've been hearing from you for the years I've known you and through now, is how much you and your team are trying to break the cycles and really make sure that if we can intervene now, look, the folks who come to you have some interaction with the criminal justice system, right? And by the time they get to you, that's already happening. But if you do the right interventions now, that you can break these cycles. So as a former legal services lawyer, I fully applaud the request for the social workers. I know what it's like where you fix a legal problem, and it's a Band-Aid on one piece of a larger puzzle, often that is broken, and the social workers are the saving grace that can help with the supports and have the time and the energy to put towards the whole. So I love this. I had a couple of quick questions for you about let's see. We already talked about the salaries. We got the social workers. Can you talk a little bit more about the full role of the social workers in the support of the attorneys, and how, I like this concept. Let me back up for a second. You're trying to decrease caseloads for the attorneys. That is essential. This is, you can't keep somebody in this ring for so long because they'll burn out. But how do you also, what's the role of the social workers to support them, and also making sure the social workers don't burn out?
Right. So right now, for both our youth and adult clients, it's a referral model that comes from the attorneys. And there's a really unpleasant word that we use in public defense called triage. And when you have 75 or 85 clients, human beings that you're representing, you as the attorney, you're making the determination of which client to prioritize for that referral. And you're going to go with the client who may be presenting active psychological and psychiatric symptoms, or the client who is deeply, deeply substance addicted, but we're not going to be referring, and we can't, and our social workers cannot handle the volume of every client who has that problem. Right now, we cannot prioritize clients who are homeless for helping them find housing services. We do not prioritize clients for helping them find a job. We do triage. It's like an emergency room where we have to decide who to prioritize as we're preparing for court in a day or 2 days or in a week. And sometimes our attorneys get their cases the day before. Depending on where our clients are in the system, at most maybe 2 weeks before for the more serious cases. So we're talking our attorneys who are incredible, doing a lot of work in a very short amount of time and making a very, very quick call. Well, this is a client I'm going to refer. In terms of for our social workers, they're amazing. They come to our office. The starting salary for a social worker is $54,000. These are social workers often with MSWs. They are a portion of our population that tells us, I'm not going to be here long because this is not sustainable. And so we do what we can to also support them in terms of salaries and benefits, but also a lot of training, a lot of support. We just had Social Work Month in March, where again, we want to emphasize to them that we're invested in their well-being and supporting them in the work. I have to mention our social workers in the child advocacy unit who go to where our clients are at. These are not pretty places in the city of Philadelphia, but they go to our clients' homes, they build those relationships, they meet our clients where they're at, and sometimes it's early in the morning and sometimes it's late at night. But we ensure, again, that to the extent, and they do it alone because we're not staffed for people to go in pairs. So to the extent that we can, we support them in that work. But it is really, really important work, and we are dedicated to supporting the social workers on our team.
Just one thing that you haven't said that I know, so I want to say it out loud, is that when you have a caseload that is that high on both the attorney and social worker level, they're doing their prep work at night
Yes.
and early in the morning. It
Yes.
is impossible to do it during the day, so it's
Yes.
many, many hours. Where are you recruiting your new attorneys from, and I know that you've been working very hard on increasing the diversity of your attorney staff. Where are you doing that?
We recruit primarily from the area law schools. The majority of our clients come through the clinical programs that we have at Villanova, Temple, and Villanova, Temple, Penn, and Drexel. And we also recruit from Rutgers. In order for us to really build a diversity, we have started a partnership with Howard. And so we've had several attorneys in the last 2 classes come from Howard University, as well as other HBCUs around the country. Mr. Gillison, sitting here, has done incredible work, along with several other members of our team, Melissa Singleton, to name one, who goes out and far off into the HBCUs around the country to try to build those relationships. I will say, again, it's helpful to be able to entice someone to come to Philadelphia, particularly a diverse candidate, if we can offer a salary that is competitive with other public defender agencies. As we all know, I'm a broken record with this. We do not get the city pension, and so our ability to be able to come to Philly, we have to be able to have a comparable starting salary to other agencies.
And one last quick question, if she's not going to cut me off, is, do I remember correctly, too, that you have to...
We pay, the things that we pay for include rent and real estate taxes. We also pay for all of our IT infrastructure. And just by comparison, the Office of Information and Technology spends about $4,200 per city employee. We do not get any support from OIT, so every single piece of paper clip, stapler, laptop, all of that is paid out of our base budget. And so in those 2 areas, particular rent, technology, and of course the pension are things that we are not getting funding from the city to support.
Well, I'm your biggest fan, so you got me
Thank you,
already.
Commissioner Landau.
Thank you.
Commissioner, City Council Jones might fight you for that. Yeah. Thank you for your support.
Thank you, Councilwoman. A couple of questions, really quickly. As we talk, particularly around young folks, as you talked a moment ago about the idea of them being sort of in this pipeline and what happens, they're sitting, they're waiting, and they may be aged out, and then next thing you know, they're up at SCI Phoenix, because they've gone through the process and then they're, sent to SCI Phoenix. One of the proposals, I think, from the Commonwealth is to build a juvenile facility at SCI Phoenix, and which I find incredibly disturbing. Because it sort of sends a few messages. This is where you're going to be anyway. This is where you're going in the future. This is your future. And so I'm just wondering, I know it's not directly something that you all have, advocated against, but I'm just wondering, I would like to hear your thoughts on that matter.
So we do represent youth, a significant amount of youth who are what we call direct file juveniles. They are charged as adults, and we have to go through a process called decertification, where they may be decertified back to family court. And these are the children that you read about in the news. I would submit here that every one of our child clients is worthy of an investment, and a trauma-informed investment. But right now, we would need to make a significant investment in facilities that are in Philadelphia or as close to Philadelphia as possible. The facilities throughout PA, will not say it directly, but they don't want Philadelphia children, and they don't want Philadelphia children because they're black. And they're staffed by almost predominantly all white staff members, and so the experience of our youth there, which is why so many of these placements were closed, was deplorable, and many members of this body know about that treatment.
Yes.
So we need to make the investment to build facilities in places where my client who is convicted of a carjacking or my client who's convicted of a gun offense, is going to be placed, but can we emphasize placing them closer to home with people who perhaps more look like them and or are trained to be able to address their needs. And right now, I do agree that the facility on State Road is, I think, from a trauma perspective, is not optimal, but it's closer than Texas for
Right.
that population.
Right.
We can at least see them more often, and
Right.
their families can see them more often, but it's not the solution that we would advocate for.
Gotcha. No city pension and no OIT support.
Correct.
What does this investment do to address either of those issues, if at all?
So the last page of the slide presentation, I believe our OI, our infrastructure ask this budget cycle is $685,000, and that would include making sure everyone has a laptop and a desktop, and subscription to evidence.com, which is $185,000. That's the way Discovery come to us. And so that would be remarkable to get that support from OIT. So that line
Okay.
item ask is $685,000 of the $15 million.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Chair recognizes Councilmember Ahmad.
Madam Chair, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Your role is enshrined in our Constitution.
Yes, we're the only constitutionally required lawyers.
That's right. So, given that, why is there a disparity between the DAO's office and you?
There's an expert at NYU who has done a study that shows that the United States currently is investing $6 billion in public defense agencies, but the actual investment needs to be $21 billion. So we are not alone when you look at public defender offices throughout the state and throughout the country. We are typically underfunded and under-resourced and are out of parity with the district attorney's office. And I will dare say it's because of who we represent. This body has been bold and very supportive of the Defenders Association, of the clients that we represent, and has been supportive of our budget asks. But we do still, at the Defender Association, we have some way to go, and that is no different from every other public defense agency in this nation.
So I think Philadelphia should take the lead and
It would
make
be
sure
great.
that you don't have to keep begging every
It would be great.
every
great.
year. But I also wanted to ask, the MacArthur grant funding was zeroed out for positions in the Defender's Office, but maintained in the city in other programs. What is that about? Did we read this right? That there was a MacArthur grant that was funding some positions in your office?
Yes, and I'm actually going to turn that over to Sarah Allen, who was integral in getting and in the working group for the MacArthur grant.
Yeah.
I believe we still have 4 positions that are MacArthur grant funded, our bail advocate program, which I believe the study showed was the only MacArthur initiative that reduced racial disparities. We have continued to use MacArthur funds to staff those positions.
Okay, and when you speak about social workers, do you also have room for behavioral therapists or mental health care in a more focused manner than just social workers in your budget?
We do have a budget for, if we want to bring on experts, but that again, given the budget, are for cases where we may need to have our client evaluated, for example, by a psychologist or a neuropsychologist, and to run a full battery of neuropsychological testing, because we want to show that they are incompetent and they cannot proceed to trial, and so we prioritize experts. We don't have anyone in-house, but we prioritize retaining experts on those types of of cases where we know that our client either is incompetent or is so severely mentally ill, they will never retain competency, and then they may be housed at State Road or they may be housed at Norristown, or more likely one of our state facilities.
Do you have a relationship with DBH in terms of providing that without sort of an in-house kind of support? You know, even if somebody, it's more of a behavioral therapy in order to level out the cortisol levels in your clients, in order for them to make better choices and be much more present in their own defense. And it is very hard to do that when you are under severe stress and you're traumatized. And so I'm thinking of how our a DBH, which has a very big budget reimbursed by the federal government, and because you're enshrined in our Constitution, I believe it's the federal government's duty to make sure you get sufficient support in order for competent defense for anybody in this justice system. So I don't know if you have explored that. So that's one. And two is sort of the diversionary part of your work, which is sort of pre-trial. What is your engagement there? What does that look like?
So we have social workers with their masters, social workers who have done clinical hours. Again, the volume of our work is too much for them to be, at this moment, assigned to a particular client, and or to have any kind of treatment modality or treatment relationship with that client. That's not. I think that would be a utopia for any public defender office, and right now we are so far beyond or below that kind of mechanism or that design. So, we have experienced social workers who work with clients who do crisis intervention. They're trained in crisis intervention, and if you go into any mental health courtroom, we have mental health courts at the CJC, and you will see our clients and how they present, and you'll watch a public defender, social worker, and our lawyers be able to, intervene with our clients and be able to kind of help them and advocate for them in that moment. But right now, ensuring that we're working with the courts and the DAO and other stakeholders to make sure they're getting treatments or they're getting their medication, it's appropriate medication, that they're getting treated for that underlying mental illness is something that, again, our social workers and our attorneys do. But as I mentioned before, the need is great for that population as well.
So in other words, your intervention, diversionary intervention, is really after they've already been arrested. So
Yes.
it's not, there's no role you play pre to this
Nope.
in sort of a global way.
On diversion, we are, again, if someone has been arrested, that's when
That's the only
we
way.
come in. We don't see the pre-trial world.
And the lack of pension, is that a decision that was made by whom?
I don't know, but I will tell you, and others on council will tell you, that it has been explored. And we have talked to the managing director's office in the past, not the current, and the law department, and it's an issue that I don't know that we are going to be able to be part of the city's pension plan, although we would love to be.
Deeply unfair. Anyway, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for your
Thank you,
testimony.
Councilmember.
You know where I stand.
Thank you, Council Lady. Chair recognizes Councilman Jones.
Madam Chair,
You're very welcome.
truly appreciate it.
No problem.
First of all, I owe you and your organization, your team, a thank you. Early on when we did the 100-shooter review, it was your department, your intellectual property, that showed us the way that if you don't deal with early intervention, you will see these same individuals matriculate through the justice system to be the adult and defendant, please rise. And until you kind of showed that correlation, it wasn't clear as it is today. Secondly, anything I'm about to say that is wrong, it is Everett Gilson's fault because he showed me, I wanted nothing to do with public safety until he kind of trailblazed his way through CJAB and through the Real-Time Crime Center and other things. So what I'm about to say does not reflect the opinions of management, but I was always told that if 17 people agree on everything, 16 of them probably aren't necessary. So I want to gently push back on behalf of Samir Jones of Simpson Street, on behalf of the young man that was 12 years old that was found in a dumpster, dead, right outside of my district. It was in Jamie Gutierrez's district, actually, that realizes that some of our shooters are getting younger, a lot of our victims are getting younger, and we have to kind of delineate between a kid that's having a bad day and no stereotypically, a bad kid. And we have to kind of, I've had people come in my office and literally say to me, if you don't get my son arrested, he's going to kill somebody or get killed. And he needs to sit down a minute to collect himself. Studies show that sometimes, the brain isn't fully developed until they're 24, and you were nice enough in our pre-meetings when I raised a stupid remedy, you were kind enough to say, well, maybe you might want to think of, you said it diplomatically, so I thank you for that. But I'm speaking up for a growing chorus of parents that are frustrated with what they perceive to be, because crime is going down, but a sense of juvenile kind of aggression and lawlessness that is occurring. I think if you're going to, I agree with my colleague that said we need to increase the number of social workers. I'll double down on that and to be able to intervene earlier, because the kid that gets kicked out of class, the kid that gets picked up for curfew, the kid that winds up in truancy, that's the kid who's raising their hand saying, at some point, if I don't get some help, I'm going to be a problem. So we agree on that aspect of it. Where I draw a line is for the kid that picks up that gun and for the kid that commits carjacking, or the kid, we need to intervene in a firm parenting way. That look, we're going to sit you down for a few, and hopefully while you're in the facility they're building up next to SCI Phoenix, my colleagues and I went up and toured the facility, that they're getting treatment, that they're getting programs that change them for the better, and not being put in gladiator school, but being put in a school that helps them see the world differently. And so some of my best friends, the only person in here that probably has as much street cred as Jimmy Harity, his graffiti's still up in some neighborhoods that I represent, but some of the guys that went through your system came out to be responsible adults. When we closed Glen Mills, some of those young men that came through that actually wound up being the bus drivers, the civil service workers that are now contributing members of society. So although I support my colleagues that are, council has gotten a little more, I want to say, to the left, there you go. I was trying to be, but everybody ain't to the left here. And I don't consider myself hardcore, even though I get it from you, but I want that balance so that our young people understand there are consequences to your actions, because left unto their own devices, I'm going to too many janazas, too many funerals. And, once a kid gets itself together, yeah, that's good, but that other kid, that other young person, that's forever. So I just wanted to say for the record, don't hate me, colleagues, but there is a differing opinion on how we should approach our young people. Parent accountability also is one. And so I said that, you nodded in the appropriate places, you didn't, but please.
Really quick response. I would challenge the description, I don't believe that they're bad kids. I have been a public defender for 22 years. I did death penalty work for 10 of those years. We do something called mitigation history, where we go back 3 generations in death penalty world. And you will see the strains and the impact of drug abuse, which is a genetic and goes through the family for generations. There are always 2 or 3 generations back of drug abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, all those. We put a red dot in 3 generations looking back to why our client is now on death row, and you see those trends 3 generations back. In public defense, we don't have the luxury of every client saying, well, let's look at your history, but I would want to sit down in a room with those parents. I would want to pull out the adverse childhood experiences form. It's a 10-question form. Say, mom and dad, fill out the ACEs score. I personally am a 7 on the ACEs score, but it's out of 10. And the higher your ACEs score, the more you are likely to be entangled, not just in the criminal justice system, but have poorer health outcomes. And the majority of my clients on death row, I represented 30 clients, had an 8 or above, 8 out of 10 on that adverse childhood experiences, but not just them, mom, dad, grandmother, great-grandmother did way before they came to us. So when we're talking about interventions, I would say, mom, I know you want your child out of the house, but let's really talk about what's going on with you. Or what's going on with who's in the home with the child, and what can we offer to support and help you get the support you need to better be able to parent. A lot of the family members for our youth particularly were never parented, never given any sort of love or affection, and it was not because their parents couldn't, their parents didn't know how to, because they themselves did not get that example or model of love and affection, and they can parent their children, and that's why we have the children we have. But none of them are bad. They're all wonderful, beautiful children. I believe that, and I believe they're all savable, and with proper interventions, they are all savable.
And that's why I'm so glad you're the defender. There's a certain wiring that comes with that. But I today rise to speak on behalf of the victims' parents. They deserve a voice too, and they deserve safety. When I was coming up, and I'm gonna end on this, Madam Chair, that if you grew up in Winfield, Mr. President, when you grew up in Winfield, there was a family, and I won't name their names, but anybody who grew up in Winfield knows the family I speak, that I told, it was so, they were, I don't know if you believe in genetics or environment.
Oh, I do. Genetics is part of it, right? Bipolar disorder, for example, if you have bipolar and you look through the mother's genes, it comes down through the mom generations.
So this family was famous or infamous, right? So much so that when I told my daughter when she started dating, if you bring one of them home, it's a problem. And all I'm saying is that I just want to make sure that as we move more to the left of our thinking and restorative justice, I was all a part of that we don't forget the victims of the people that can't be redeemed by this endeavor. They just lost a kid. And so it's on the record. Thank you, Mr. President.
No, thank you. I just think, it takes a comprehensive approach. I'm empathetic to what Councilman Jones, I understand where he's speaking from, right? Everybody have their own different life experience. I know his life experience. I know my life experience in terms of, like, we both really grew up in the mix of an environment, right? Where there could be a variety of different factors of why people take different paths, but being mindful of, we want to support people comprehensively and also be mindful that, like, my experience is similar. I got friends, one of my guys from St. Gabe's, All-Star at Maryland for playing Maryland Eastern Shore, right? And I know we went to the left and said, well, let's close down all these facilities for juveniles, right? Because the data shows being not in the house, this is what they told me in the meeting I had, the data shows not being in a home isn't going to have an impact on if that person rehabilitates, if I'm saying it correctly. However, a lot of times we're asking young people to rehabilitate in an environment, right, where they're surrounded by nothing but death and destruction. And as professionals, right, and most of us probably middle class, right, don't even live in these, I'm just saying just in general, right? So you're asking a person that's living around death and destruction to rehabilitate themselves in an environment that's filled with death and destruction. And peer pressure is real, right? You turn on social media, and day in and day out, all we see, if you go on Philly Scoop Ball, I'm an elected official, I stay on Philly Scoop Ball, and I'll see every homicide, every shooting that takes place in the city of Philadelphia. And I just browse through it, right? And our young people are feeding into this every single day, right? And so now it comes from an era where I grew up, it was about getting girls, and you had, the guys doing the drugs, but now it's about just guns. They ain't even trying to go to party. I don't think they have an after midnight. I don't think they have spaces for them to enjoy themselves. However, with all that being said, right?
Just for the record, Mr. President, I support your budget. We all good?
We already know you support the
We all
budget.
good.
Thank you, Councilmember. Thank
When
you.
you got more money last time after the mid-transfer.
Yeah.
You're a transfer.
I'm with you.
Thank
I
you.
was
Thank you.
I was just thinking about the approach, but I'm with comprehensive. Know my story. I'm never ashamed to say my judge's name was Reynolds, right? Probation, right? First time gun charge. What do you want to do with your life? Didn't have to, so I had the experience going down to youth study center in the van in the evening, right? I know what the cold cheese sandwich and the tea, that experience, right? However, I would not be the first African American to represent the 2nd Councilmanic District. I would not be a former state representative. I would not be a member of City Council as the council president. I will not be a graduate from the University of Pennsylvania. I will not be a graduate of Mansfield University had not I seen some other individuals invest in me. And that's coming from a household that had challenges, but there were other people who saw some things in me that I didn't necessarily see and say, hey, you know what, young man? You can do a little better. You can make better decisions with your life. And so I do understand when you're saying, well, when that mom say, come and take my child, well, hold up. Let's see what's going on inside the household. Why are they acting this way? Who are they hanging around? And so I do understand taking that comprehensive approach. And also, we do it a lot of mothers, though. When I looked at mom in the face, you're not having Christmas or celebrating Ramadan with your son or your daughter and have to look them in the eyeballs and try to figure out how to get them some level of consoling. But that's why we do the hard work. That's why we all wrap our arms around trying to address this issue. I'm going to release my time, because I talked a little bit, but this is a very, very critically important issue. It's about saving our young people and making sure that they have that opportunity, such as myself and Curtis Jones, similar background, and Jim. We not like, choir boys growing up, but through the grace of God, we had a chance to do some things differently on the right path. The chair recognizes Councilmember Jim Harity.
Thank you, Council President. Hello, how are you?
Good afternoon, Councilmember.
And I agree. I too had a lot of issues when I was a young man and got a lot of different chances from different people. The court system, public defender. So I get it, but I also get what Councilman Jones was trying to say, that, the harsh reality is that things happen. And kids in neighborhoods like mine, they grow up pretty quick. While their age may say that they're a kid, their actions do not. But that being said, why are you asking for a housing navigator so that, I can just get my head around that? And what would they do? And why is your office the place to house them? And then just so we can just get right through, the other question is, how have you been working with the community? And can you talk about some of the stuff you've been doing in that aspect?
So we're asking for a housing navigator to primarily work with our dependency units because our older youth who age out of dependency, whether they age out at 18 or 21, the planning for them to transition out of DHS, I believe, begins 30 days before they have aged out of the system. That planning, that transitional planning begins in 30 days. And so what we've started to see is that our dependent youth coming through that system, once they age out, unfortunately become part of the homeless population. Because we need so much longer than 30 days to find someone a rental property. You have to understand our clients are not as savvy as we may think they should be in terms of navigating a lease, what's in a lease agreement, what their rights are, accessing public benefits or public housing. Our clients do not have the capability to do that. So
these are people aging out of the system?
that
is
will
what it is?
be,
So it would be,
both navigators will be for our youth practice units to focus on older youth that we represent in those systems to make sure they have housing resources and they have someplace to live when they're coming out of both the dependency and delinquency system.
so these are foster kids, is that what it is? Or-
No, they can be peer in terms of people who've been through the system, but it really is to navigate the bureaucracy and to help them understand how to connect to housing resources and get placed into stable housing and access public housing or stable rental and or other affordable housing opportunities.
Okay, so these would be people that are in the system, the
They
actual
could,
justice
they
system?
they could be. And
Yeah.
we're very, very proud that we are a major employer of people who have been through both the dependency and the youth and adult system, that we are an employer. We believe in that second chance, or for many people, we would term a first chance to get them employed in our organization, and we do that. So they can be people who know the system already, and actually that would be preferable if they already know how to navigate or they themselves have navigated that system and are a success story for how to work with our clients to get access to those systems.
Okay, well, and then how have you been working in the community, and what can you tell us about your community partners?
Yes, we're very proud to be part of a reentry coalition that meets every other month. It is several dozen community agencies that come to our office, they send representatives to our office to talk about ways that we can help our youth and adults, primarily women. We're seeing a very high population of women, many of them mothers, who need not just housing, but also access to childcare resources and training and employment opportunities. And so we partner with groups like Why Not Prosper. We partner with Mothers in Charge. We have partnerships with several organizations, again, where we can say we have clients who need a house and or a job and or a mom who needs childcare while she's going through trying to find employment, and so we partner with those organizations. Last year, we did nearly 12,000 expungements, and so we run expungement clinics throughout the year where we work with clients to get their records expunged so that they can get opportunities to those employment and housing, quite frankly.
That's good. You know, just for the record, I believe in second chances. I believe that when a child first gets into the system, we should do everything that is possible in our power in order to try to guide that child to another path. But sometimes we're going to have to come to the realization that some can't be saved.
And again, I beg to disagree. I think they can be with the robust investments. We have to be able to be bold, and this body has been to make those investments. And I do say that I have never had an older client who, once they got to 35 and 40 and 45 and 50, that was the same person who did that crime at 18 or 23 or 25. I have zero clients because we mature, we have remorse, we have regret, we've learned, our clients have had time to reflect. They've had time to reach out, sometimes through victim advocacy work, to apologize through restorative justice.
That's because they went through the system.
They went through the system.
And they grew up because of the experiences they had that made them grow up in that system. I'm not saying that, you know, all I'm saying is there are people that, you know, when they pick up a gun and they shoot 3, 4 people, that's no longer a kid. They made an adult decision, and they're gonna have to deal with that. Now, they go, they do their time, they come out, that's all, I'm for all that, helping them once they get to their thing. But the bottom line is, if, you know, somebody's killing somebody else, they need to be punished for that crime.
Don't, you know, I could respond, but, yeah, I think I've responded enough. I think I've said enough. Thank you, Councilmember. Thank you, Councilmember, and thanks for your support.
So I think the spirit is, at least from my perspective, and I see it both ways. You know, we want to err on the side of trying to save as many as possible,
Correct.
right? Because
Correct.
we also recognize, particularly in black neighborhoods,
We cannot be,
and brown.
we cannot be
Let
content.
me finish.
Right.
There's been a lot of disinvestment for years, and as a result, a lot of children make poor decisions. And then I want to also break down this misnomer that every kid that pulls a trigger comes from a bad family. It's not true. I know we had a different war in South Philadelphia. Some of these kids was in college. Them are college kids. Get the best they can from their parents, but decide to get caught up in the street life. We can have this whole conversation at another time, but remember, Harry, anything else you have to say before I wrap up with Councilmember O'Rourke?
No, I mean, I'm supportive too
Thank
of your
you.
budget.
Thank you very much, and we appreciate that support. Thank you.
I will say one aspect. I think a lot of kids, though, when they engage in these acts, you should be held accountable, but I don't think that all of them that engage in the acts, and I've seen this from talking to them, sometimes after the fact, it shouldn't be after the fact, but the remorse and really recognizing what you have done. And then we have a big drug issue amongst the youth. Most of them pull a trigger on wet, which is embalming fluid. Most of them pull a trigger on perks and Xannies. And then as soon as they get down to the homicide room, they crying and they telling. They try and cop a deal because what they just did, they kind of realized they was acting off emotions, which is a whole nother conversation. But we continue to look forward working with you. I'm gonna turn it over to Councilmember O'Rourke.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Thank you, Council President, and excuse my ignorance. Law is not here to testify today, correct?
Law is here.
They are here?
Yeah, we still have one more department.
Gotcha, understood. I'll get to them later then. I just had the one, oh my goodness. First of all, I didn't say this earlier. 60 years of Wawa. So free coffee, I think folks know today.
Today?
Today, as of today. I also heard through a text message from one of my folks that Ben & Jerry's is giving out free cones for those that are interested. I'm saying all this to say happy 90 years.
Correct.
To the
Thank
Defenders
you. 90
Association
years.
recently.
Thank you.
And we can
Thank you.
clap our hands for
Councilmember,
the.
thank you. Thank you.
I am curious about the different support staff that the Defenders actually employs. Can you tell us more about the peer advocates in the CAU specifically, and how are you trying to bring this practice to other youth units? And if there's time, I'd love to know about the Partners for Justice team.
Yes, and it was with support of our budget allocation last year and with support of DHS that we were able to bring on 4 peer advocates. They started 3 weeks ago. These are all older, younger adults who have all been through the dependency system. And so we think that for the dependency unit, bolstering our interdisciplinary model where it's a lawyer, a social worker, and now a peer advocate to focus on the older youth in their representation will achieve better outcomes. And that's a model that other dependency units across the country have, and it's a model that works remarkably well. So it's 4 peer mentors or peer advocates, and we are excited that they're finally on board, and we want to thank Council and DHS for supporting that endeavor. And your second question was
Just was
Partners
curious.
for Justice.
Yeah, Partners for
Yes.
Justice.
Again, it was through City Council support last budget cycle. We have 3 client advocates through Partners for Justice. Partners for Justice is a national organization that works with defenders organizations and places client advocates in those organizations, and what those client advocates do and what the data has already showed for us and shows nationally with their partnerships is that if you pair a client advocate or a social worker doing case management with a client, and they are with that client for the entirety of their juvenile or their justice system involvement, that their outcomes are much better and recidivism rates are lower. So our client advocates do everything from let me try to find you housing to let me get you furniture because you have no money for furniture. Let me help you make sure you have access to transportation to get to your job interviews. Let's work on writing your resume. This is how you do a job interview. They literally are just with our clients doing at every step of the way, and the outcomes are much different for clients at the end of it. So the model we're trying to have with our social workers is to do more like that, where they're able to be paired with, starting with youth, to do all the things that we think our clients will need to thrive in society.
Well, thank you very much
Thank
for that.
you.
Again, thank you for the work that you all do.
Thank
SCU
you.
is crucial to
you.
bringing about justice in our city, and so grateful for, again, your advocacy and the work that you do at the Defenders Association.
Thank you.
Blessings to
Appreciate your support, Councilmember.
Councilmember Young.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Could you,
This is the one who asked about, he wanted to make sure Defenders Association was okay. Go ahead, sir.
could you, I guess just talk to us a little bit about the demographics of the attorneys that are at the office, and particularly the class that you say, is there 26 attorneys coming in the fall class? Can you tell us the demographics of that class and the overall makeup of the office?
Yes, I'm proud to say that since I've been Chief Defender and since we have been much more intentional and aggressive, again, with Mr. Gilson's help in trying to recruit a diverse staff. For our fall class of 2023, we set a goal of 50% diversity. We wanted at least 50% of the 20 attorneys in the fall of 2023 to be Black and brown attorneys. We set a goal of 70% for this incoming class in the fall of 2024, and we have reached that goal. So 70% of the 20 attorneys, actually 70% of the 26 attorneys for both criminal and our dependency side are attorneys of color. Again, we're trying to do everything that we can to increase our recruitment, but on the other hand, we need to retain the staff, the diverse staff that we are bringing in. So we are meeting the goals that we are setting. It's now making sure we can keep them.
So I've been getting mixed, I guess, information from folks who were prior public defenders, and then with information that we've been, that you and I have talked about. So can you tell us what are some of the challenges with the retention, particularly with the attorneys of color?
I think part of the challenges regarding retention have to do with salary. I think they also have to do when you ask, and this is something I did when I started, I pulled all the exit interviews for every diverse public defender who left in the previous 5 years, and I read all of them to see why were they leaving. And the predominant, the three reasons why people were leaving had to do with salary, it had to do with benefits, it had to do with lack of kind of the ability to advance in terms of if they wanted to be in a supervisor role or a managerial role. And it was regarding, whether or not they felt that there was enough priority and support on DEI and equity issues in the organization. And so prioritizing, putting what I've done in my time here is to put in a distinct role for diversity, equity, and inclusion, and to put people in that role to not only take part in the diversity recruitment, but also to ensure that our predominantly white attorney staff and our is working with and collaborating with and understanding and are culturally competent with our client population, but also with their colleagues.
Do you provide any cultural training for any new attorneys that are coming on board the Defenders Association?
We do. Again, since I've been Chief Defender, we make sure that that is part of the incoming fall classes training. We are very proud of our training program. We start off with a 5-week training before our attorneys go into courtrooms. And diversity, equity, and inclusion is part of that 5-week training. We also, as I said before, have someone in that role, but we also, right now, we're doing a mandatory LGBTQ training for all staff. That's mandatory, and that's something we've been doing every year, as well as ensuring, again, that our attorneys of all races and backgrounds understand the issues and the Philadelphia issues. One thing we have changed is for attorneys who have not studied in Philadelphia, understand Philadelphia. So what does the move bombing mean, and some of the areas where our clients are coming from and they live, and the impact of redlining, for example, that our attorneys who are not from Philadelphia understand Philadelphia, and that when our clients say West Philly or South Philly or North Philly, what are you talking about, and what does that have to do with who that client is that you're looking at and that you're representing? So we ensure that, again, our attorneys are trained on, really all our staff are trained on those issues.
And I have one more question, Mr. President, if you don't mind. Thank you, sir. Can you talk to us about the issue that pertains, that your office experiences when there is a conflict counsel appointed for some of the, particularly the juvenile offenders, and talk about the experiences of the, I guess, the time that it takes for these cases to play itself out through the court system when there is a court-appointed attorney going through that process.
I was very pleased to hear Councilmember Landau ask about court-appointed attorneys today. They play a very critical role. We represent 70% of the people who come through the criminal justice system, and we cannot represent everyone, again, because of resources, but there are conflicts. And of course, there are people who can hire and can afford to hire private counsel. But the role of court-appointed counsel is very important. And we also have to understand that poor people are the ones who get court-appointed counsel. It is by virtue of a conflict that they don't get the Defenders Association. But what happens with court-appointed counsel, that there was a recent article today regarding the fact that it takes sometimes months for them to get paid. In that article, an investigator who I have worked with in the past, Diane Cowan, who's incredible, has said that she will no longer take court appointment cases as an investigator. And court-appointed counsel have to submit vouchers to the courts, to the city, to be able to have investigation, any experts, all the resources that they will need to access in their representation. Representing kids is a specialized practice. It is a unique practice. You need the training, you need the expertise. We have the best children and youth justice unit in our office and the best juvenile special defense unit in our office. Though small, they are really excellent at what they do. We also, have the training and expertise to know what we need to do in and outside of the courtroom to better ensure that our clients are not being detained as long. And if they're going to be placed, they're not going to be out at placements as long. We really are experts, and so you will see that we are engaging with our clients. We have the ability to. We have more resources than sometimes court-appointed counsel does, even though we need more. And that is why you may see that the length of stay looks different for defender-represented clients than court-appointed clients. It comes down to, again, the touch points that we represent the vast majority of the children at the JJSC. The courts know us, they see it, the judges see us every day, and you may not have that level of expertise from court-appointed counsel represented children.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, council member.
Thank you. Any other questions from members of council for this panel? Hearing none. At this time, I want to thank you for, first and foremost, your dedication, your hard work that you have been doing. Since you took on this position, you have been moving this office forward. And I'll just wrap up. You have taken the out-of-the-box approach, right? Assigning housing counselors, assigning education attorneys, assigning social workers. That just changes the dynamics of how you work with defenders, because at the end of the day, having that opportunity to interact with them while they're going through whatever case it may be, right, can really transform their lives from a prevention standpoint. They might have made that mistake that introduced them to the system, but then you have that opportunity to interact with them. Me, I had a probation officer. That's who Judge Reynolds assigned me to, right? And at that time, she would pop up on me when I'm on the corner, see what I was doing, and that just encouraged me to start looking at applying to schools. And I went to Mansfield University, and at this time, homicide rates in the city of Philadelphia was already 500. And then when we say it depends on who's in the position, well, we had Castile, we had Lynn Abrams, but the homicide rates were still going up, and it didn't change. So at some point in time, we got to look at things a little differently, right? And this is to try to help people at an intersection where you can transform their lives, then maybe think about doing something different, or maybe putting an option in front of them that they may not have never thought of, because in most of these neighborhoods, and I'm speaking from lived experience, most of the neighborhoods, this is all some people know, right? Come from an area where you didn't venture really downtown, but so much because we had thriving business corridors. So what's the point of going downtown? And that's all you know within your corridor, your block, right? And so when you do get in a situation, you have that opportunity with your social worker, case managers to kind of maybe hopefully help somebody think about the life choices that they're making and hopefully provide the resources. So just keep up the good work. With that being said, I'm going to ask for, and also just welcome back Everett Gillison, for those who may not know, part of another administration. Public Safety, Deputy Commissioner for Public Safety, correct? Yeah, we've met at plenty of days around the same topic of keeping the city of Philadelphia forward. But it's good to see you back, still doing the same work, which we know that means it's in your heart, because you're back still doing the same work that you were doing when you were part of the administration. With that being said, thank you very much. Would a clerk please call the next person for testimony?
Thank you, Council President.
You're
Thank you.
welcome.
Renee Garcia, City Solicitor.
Good morning.
Good afternoon.
Oh,
Don't take us back to the morning, Council President.
We had a long day yesterday.
It's been a long day.
So, it was a long day yesterday. Before you state your name and your title, begin your testimony, I want to congratulate you on your position.
Thank you.
Congratulations on your outstanding legal work as relates to us fighting the gun manufacturer, particularly around the issue of ghost guns. I think that deserves a round of applause because
Thank you.
as a district council member, I remember introducing legislation to deal with just the actual parts, and then we got sued, and you stepped up to the plate and said, hey, we're going to take on these giants as it relates to ghost guns and how they're flooding the streets of Philadelphia. And so we just want to personally, on behalf of this body, to say thank you. We appreciate your hard work and your dedication around that particular issue. With that being said, go ahead and begin your testimony.
Thank you, Council President. Renee Garcia, City Solicitor. Good afternoon. I'm joined here by my executive team, which are all here behind me, and pleased to provide testimony on the Law Department's fiscal year 2025 operating budget proposal. My remarks will be somewhat brief today because I was with you just about 4 weeks ago, so you know, you've already heard a lot about the Law Department's initiatives. We employ over 360 attorneys and professional staff who have dedicated their professional careers to serving the city. I, along with my entire team of the Law Department, have the esteemed honor and pleasure of applying innovative legal strategy on behalf of our city clients to achieve equitable solutions to some of the most complex challenges facing Philadelphia. Continued investment in the current and future legal operations of the Law Department will benefit the city socially, economically, and environmentally. As this City Council knows, the Law Department's work touches every part of the lives of this city's residents, from supporting contracts and real estate transactions that allow public parks and playgrounds to be built, to initiating litigation to improve quality of life and reduce gun violence, to protecting our most vulnerable children and ensuring they have room to grow, thrive, and be the future of Philadelphia. Law's work is integral to ensuring safer, cleaner, greener, and economically vibrant future of our city. In the past 5 years alone, the Law Department has recovered hundreds of millions of dollars in settlement funds, tax revenue, fines, and fees on behalf of the city, boosting the general fund and enabling the city to apply those funds to efforts to address safety and quality of life issues across Philadelphia. This commitment to investing in Law's staff is crucial to both retention and our ability to attract and hire a diverse set of the best and brightest legal minds, which we need as we work together to solve some of the city's most complex challenges. Our proposed general fund budget totals $28,266,870. The budget submission includes an overall decrease of $2.788 million, with $3.45 million coming from Class 200, which removes funding for the implementation of a new case management system. And we have an increase to Class 100 in the amount of $622,000 to fund new positions. And with that, I'll take any of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The chair recognizes Councilmember Ketty Lozada.
I can't even believe I'm first. Welcome. Thank you so much for all the work that you do. Thank you for the support that you've given to me and my staff as we've worked to build legislation over the course of the last 17 months. Extremely grateful for the support. As we work to better improve quality of life in the district and across the city, it's no secret that we have many nuisance businesses within or across the city. How is the law department working with the Department of License and Inspection to better tackle this issue now that the License and Inspection Department has been divided in two?
Yes. So we did not obtain in this budget new staffing positions in our budget for nuisance businesses for essentially our code team. So we are in conversations with L&I and Cleaner and Greener and the police department, and we will determine, as they determine what their needs are going into the new year, how they can support our budget with new attorneys and staff. But we are in many, many conversations, and we have a very ambitious slate of commissioners, obviously supported by a very ambitious mayor. So, you know, as I was listening to the mayor's budget address, I was thinking legal work, right, on down the line. So there will be a need for sure to increase the staffing, particularly in our code team. And we already did staff up. So last year, City Council was able to give us $500,000. We hired 4 new attorneys and 3 new support staff, and they're up and running. And I can tell you the numbers of referrals that we got from L&I just in this last year is 3,000 cases plus the board appeals. And now I'm expecting even more on top of that.
What do we or what do city residents have to do to, I guess, target a business or mark a business or make a business a nuisance business, right? We get calls all the time about a very specific business who's consistently violating whether it be quality of life issues or whether it be liquor license issues. How does a person make an establishment a nuisance, and how long does it take the law department to actually execute or take this business to court?
Yep, and a lot of it kind of depends on what the nuisance is, obviously. But we are also beholden to the referrals that we get from L&I, and I believe they are staffing up as well. So we have to wait for the referral to come in. But what we are seeing, and I think what you are seeing, is a game of whack-a-mole. So in the drug paraphernalia space, we cite them, they take it down, they bring it back up, right? In the tobacco space, we cite them, they take it down, they bring it back up. And so depending on the violation, certainly there are ways to go to the most egregious, which is to take away a commercial activity license. And we do that, absolutely. But what we are looking at now, and we can have discussions offline, I think there probably could be code amendments to help with the enforcement as we are working with the new commissioners and figuring out where our target will be, because we are also feeling the frustration of multiple offenders.
I just heard you mention that you guys hired up, right? Are you at a place in your department where you feel like with the work that this current administration wants to do, are you at a point where you feel that you have the necessary staffing to be able to respond to the type of work that we are looking forward to doing in the future? And if not, what would it take?
Well, we did ask for 67 new positions, which I know is pie in the sky. We got 500,000, which will be about 5 positions, and we have 3 positions from the MDO, so we're at 8. And like I said, we're going to each of the operating departments who got funding to figure out what they can pay for, because certainly we can't, for litigation, for defensive litigation, I can't control what comes in, right? What comes in, either we're going to handle it internally or we're going to send it to outside counsel, which is just class 200. So I've reached capacity in labor and employment and capacity in civil rights, and I'm sending work out. With contracts, I can't control the flow of contracts, right? I hate to tell people I can't work on your, and I mean I and the sort of royal I, right? I can't work on, so certainly we're upscaling, and the MDO positions will help us there. And then in our affirmative, right, our code, our tax, our affirmative litigation, which does the ghost guns, that is, you don't see it as optional, but we can control a little more, but obviously we want to push ahead and push ahead and push ahead. So these conversations that we're having with the different operating departments is crucial. What is your need going to be? How can I pivot the work that I'm already doing, and how much more can you support the law department's budget?
Thank you, Council President.
You're welcome. The chair recognizes Councilwoman Nina Mai.
Thank you, Council President. Good afternoon. I have a quick question about, in your testimony, you said that you're helping, I don't know how you say it, OPAL, with the transition over to a new program called the Workday program. Yes. This is on page 10 of your testimony. Can you please talk more about the legal work that's involved in this?
Okay. Opal, I call it Opal.
Opal.
I call it Opal. And I will admit, I am not the best person to do a deep dive into Opal, and I think we're getting together something for City Council to hear, but it will be moving all of the contracts onto a new system. So we are unfortunately dealing with systems in the city, and you've all experienced this. They were built in, I don't know, the 70s, the 80s. They look like they're DOS-based, I don't know, but they don't work well, right? Yes. And so the flow of contracts, in particular between law, OEO, procurement, risk, finance, budget, the controller, all of the parties is not efficient, right? So what we are doing to prepare for Opal right now is going through different kinds of contracts and shoring up basic terms and processes and procedures, and how can we make it more efficient for us. So that's part of it, is kind of getting ready for Opal, making sure we have all the we know where all the contracts are, right, to get them on. And then, of course, there's the other side of it, of doing the contracts necessary to run Opal, right, which is doing the tech contracts. And again, I'm not the best person to talk about the contracts there. So there is a tremendous amount, and I think you heard the MDO this morning talk about there is a recognized need across the board to improve the contracting process. Yeah. Full stop. Law handles about a third of that process, but like I said, we are going through right now trying to update our contracts, trying to make them more consistent so that when we do start rolling through Opal, we can have more of a seamless process.
So we will be reducing the time a customer, so to speak, sees when their contract is executed. That this is going to
this is all in furtherance of that. Yes, yeah. I know, it drives me nuts as well. Yeah. There's so many pieces in this, and for good reason, right? There has to be checks and balances, and yes. I understand that, but I'm really excited about Opal and what it can bring to our contracting process.
It's a systems change, yes.
Yes.
Second quick question is that Your testimony states that the law department withdrew its motion to end overcrowding at the Philadelphia Juvenile Justice Services Center.
Yep.
Because as of November 8th, the population reached acceptable levels, and you will continue to advocate on the behalf of the city. Can you explain how you're doing that? Because this is a very
Yep.
Sacred space and difficult space.
Yeah, so thank you for the question. So just to be clear, our lawsuit stands, right? So we filed against the Commonwealth, our lawsuit stands. We had filed emergency pleadings to have the state take the children to get our numbers below 184. They did that. They haven't taken all the children that they should take, and you heard in the line of questioning earlier that these children, their time's not running, they're not getting the services they need, right? So they should be taking more kids, and that is why our lawsuit stands, right? So that we can continue to go through to judgment and have something permanent on the record. There was just not a need for the emergency motion because the numbers have come down. And I think it's only blipped up a couple times. I'm looking at my first deputy here. But for the most part, we have been under the 184. We've even hit in the 170s, which is
And you
very
still
exciting.
have your eyes on that, and that
Yes.
lawsuit is
Yes,
kind of
but we are
holding
going
them-
forward to judgment, no
Judgment.
question.
Okay. And the last question is, you mentioned that you're supporting the Office of Sustainability and operating departments on climate resiliency and environmental justice issues. Can you provide some insight about your role in this space and your capacity to address environmental issues? And one contract issue that's going to be coming up is Covanta. That's coming up in 2017. That's the, 2027.
For this, I'm going to call up my chair of the Corporate and Tax Group, Valerie Robinson, who can talk about the support of the Office of Sustainability. We have an environmental unit that is assisting them on many, many different areas of air quality. From the litigation perspective, I'll also say we are filing affirmative action. So we filed the PFAS case, for example, to recover money that we need to clean out our water because of the forever chemicals that are polluting. So Valerie, if you could talk just a little bit about the work that our regulatory team does for the Office of Sustainability.
So good afternoon. My name is Valerie Robinson. I'm the chair of the Corporate and Tax Group. And as Renee said, one of the divisions in my portfolio is the environmental division. So we provide advice and counsel to the Office of Sustainability. We draft and negotiate all of the agreements that they do. We help them work on regulations, all of which is to help ensure that we're living in a cleaner, greener, safer city.
Okay, that's good. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
The chair recognizes Councilmember Nick O'Rourke.
Thank you, Council President.
Hello.
Hello.
Good to see you. Law's proposal includes 3 new budgeted positions that are attorneys meant to aid the MDO's office specifically.
Yes.
Is this boost tied to the new initiatives that MDO is undertaking, like Clean Green, triage centers, et cetera?
I'll tell you all 3 of them. So one will be a compliance position focused on public safety and primarily the prisons. Another will be a position to support the Office of Homeless Services in a compliance and contract position. And then the third is to support the Capital Program Office. So those are the 3 that we've been approved for.
Okay. Is it kind of concomitant with MDO's plans for whatever they're planning right now for you all to increase that staff, or is it something that kind of you wanted this to happen outside of what MDO is doing?
It is to support everything that you heard testified about this morning.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to turn our attention to page 19 of Law's budget detail, to the obligated payments to Hangley, I'm about to mess these names up, Aronchik,
yeah.
Siegel, and Poodlin. I apologize. Set aside for the purpose of what's labeled Select Committee. It's my understanding, please correct me if I am wrong on this, these payments are legal fees tied to the impeachment of the DA, and that taxpayers are footing the bill to $240,000 for this last year alone. That case is still winding up the state Supreme Court, so we are wondering in our office, do you foresee Philadelphians paying more in the coming fiscal year for impeachment-related legal fees than they have in the last year?
I hope not. I don't have a crystal ball. We have a different makeup of the General Assembly now, so if it comes down, it may not be in the same posture. So I wish I could tell you what the court was going to do. I would say that it's possible. I don't know about possible or probable.
Right. But I am accurate though that's what that's for.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
So we're paying the bill for such thing. Okay. Affirmative civil litigation is always of interest to our office, particularly as it concerns suits related to climate change.
Yes.
Prior conversations with law have pointed to some specific roadblocks on that front. Still encouraged to see the issue addressed in your testimony here written. Could you give some insight into some of the viable litigation strategies that law is pursuing as it relates to holding companies that contribute to climate change effects in Philadelphia accountable?
Yeah. Some of it will be privileged information. I do have some ideas, but we are following what is going on around the country, and PFAS is a really big one. Lead paint is, lead in the water, lead in the soil is very big as well. We are working with environmental justice partners throughout the country to try to get ideas. So I have some very specific ideas, but I don't want to give away my secrets in public.
Okay, understood.
Happy to talk further with you about it, though.
Okay, but you this is not so much just in the Commonwealth. You're looking across the nation at some trends.
It is across the nation, absolutely. We have a network of solicitor county attorneys across the nation, and we are actively talking about these issues constantly, right? What can we do in the space of climate change, of environmental justice? Absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you,
I
Councilmember.
appreciate you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Council President.
The chair recognizes Rue Landell Esquire,
Thank you.
committee member. Council.
Did you say my formal name today, right? You know that I am a huge fan of the law department, too. I have worked with, I think, more individual lawyers in the law department than many, many others in the city, so a huge fan. First question is the new Consumer Protection Bill.
Yes.
Which is very exciting. It's to give the powers to the administration through the law department to fight a lot of the bad guys, folks who are scamming our residents, elders, limited English folks. How do you see, how will it be implemented? How do you want to get cases? What are you going to choose? Do you have your eyes on anything?
Yes, so there is a Consumer Protection Task Force, which I think is maybe sunsetting. It's been around for 2 years, but that's partnerships with the law department, the Attorney General's office, the CLS, different advocate groups around. I think senior law is involved. And I was really excited after you introduced the bill, and I was able to take a call with them and to say, look, like now we have the tool that we needed to go after like an MV Realty, right? That's the prime example. But it was also mentioned, I believe this morning, the targeting on elders has just ramped up. I mean, I even see it on my phone, right? Your package is not being delivered, please call us and give us your credit card, all of those things. So we now have the tool. I believe I said in my confirmation hearing, we are starting with sort of the big schemes, right? The big classes, the repeat offenders over and over again. I expect there will be a lot in the housing space, which I know is your area of expertise. So I am working with this task force to start to send in, I've given them kind of, these are the cases I'm looking for, and start sending us referrals, and we're gonna start investigating, but it is going to take a community, and I'm so thankful that we have all of these partners to rely on. It's gonna take a while to work up some cases, but I'm really excited to get that work started.
You said you thought the task force was going to sunset? Was it
I
created by
think
resolution?
it was a
or something?
2-year,
By resolution?
but by resolution, 2 years. Maybe there was an executive order, I can't exactly remember, but.
I will
but
help you extend that. if
The
it's
work
sunset.
continues, right? I don't think anybody is just going to drop the work regardless of what is sunsetting, because obviously with this new shiny toy that I have, I'm going to need everybody.
Yes. Excited for the shiny toy. Next question about the gun violence preemption case.
Yes.
Where you're trying to challenge the way in which people are interpreting preemption for all of our gun bills.
Yes.
Where exactly? It's pending at the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, and what's the status there?
Correct. It was argued in September. Again, your guess is as good as mine. They don't do the same as the U.S. Supreme Court, where they drop everything in one horrible week in June. But, you know, it could come any day, truly.
Okay. Thank you. And I want to, two more. One is just going back to contracting again. I have to. I'm having a better understanding of how court-appointed lawyers are paid now.
Yes.
And it seems that it's approved by the court itself. So it goes through various measures. You go and take a case, the judge signs off, yes, you were here. It goes through their internal administrative system. Yep, it was this person, they were here, they worked this amount of time. And it comes to the city, and we do a review as well. Can we just take the court's word for it and speed it up a little bit that way, and at least cut that part out to just like, here's your check, here's your check.
Yeah.
The alternative is to give the money to the courts, but so they can pay their court-appointed attorneys. But I think they say there's a conflict. They believe there's at least a perception of a conflict of interest. They're appointing the attorney and paying the attorney, right?
Yes. So the issue is that, I'm not going to throw finance under the bus, but for real, there are actual documents and information that has to be provided so that the finance and then the controller can sign off on everything, right? And that is where, you know, the court is signing off on the amount, but the attorney has to get in all of the documents. I'm sorry, I don't know all the specifications. It's not a good system. So I'm actually actively working with the courts to figure out a better system. Apparently this is a relic of the Nutter years, that there was an MOU that the managing director would do this. I don't know that it's the greatest place for it. So we are going to be speaking with the courts. We realize there is an issue, absolutely. We're on top of it. I speak to the courts quite frequently to try to figure out, at least for now, the quality assurance. Can we figure out what the systemic issues are so we can make payments roll faster? But it's not a great system overall.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm going to try to slip one more in, real quick. It might be too long. Okay, I am going to pause for a minute. I might come back for one more.
Okay.
Yes? Do it now. Okay, give me a second.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Okay. I know that you're working with DHS to secure additional grant funding to hire more attorneys that will allow law to engage in anti-racism work. I'm very concerned about family court and the ways in which there are too many barriers to family reunification.
Yeah.
I think it's very similar to what we just talked about with the chief defender. Let's do what we can to keep families together, to get the resources to the family if possible, and hopefully keep them out of the criminal justice system. And I know that you've been working with DHS to get some grant funding, I believe, for like anti-racism work and work with the courts. What resources are needed to ensure the city's most vulnerable children, experience positive outcomes after interaction through family court. And because we want to make sure that we provide them with the best legal representation and employ the right attorneys to make that happen. And can you just speak to that?
Yes, I'm going to call up my first deputy, Megan Goddard, who is our resident expert on all of these matters. Thank you, Megan. And she can speak to our racial justice work as well as the funding that we're trying to figure out with the Commonwealth, because some of it comes through PA, DHS, then through our DHS, and it's quite hard to figure out what they're funding and when they're funding it.
Good afternoon, Councilmember. I'm Megan Goddard, First Deputy.
Can you speak a little more into the
So
mic?
we are working, the Child Welfare Unit in the Law Department is working independently and with DHS on all DEI initiatives. Because as you mentioned, recognizing that the youth and families that come into our system are primarily of color, knowing how, like, our attorneys need those skills to know what they are working with. So we do have grant funding from the state, so we are working with DHS to ensure more attorneys, to lower caseloads, and to continue that DEI training.
Thank you. And this is also for court-appointed attorneys? Is that?
We're focusing right now working with our attorneys in the law department, in the child welfare unit, doing both law department training and working very closely with DHS. So we're on the same page.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
And I'll just put a plug in. So some of the things we were doing in the DEI space, we created an inclusive language guide for our attorneys to use when they're in court. So we're trying to get rid of words like grandfathered, right? Trying to use gender-neutral pronouns, trying to call, you know, a person a parent rather than a mother, right? Trying to use the language that fits the society we're in today. And I'm so proud that our inclusive language guide has been sent out to various partners, and the ACLU is using it, and other partners are using it. So that is some of the work that's really important for us in the DEI space, and particularly in child welfare.
Excellent. I'll take a copy.
Yes,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Copies for all.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Councilmember Jay Young, Esquire.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just questions regarding Act 135. Just correct me if I'm wrong. Does the city get notices for every Act 135 petition filed?
We should be. And we have worked out, if you're asking, we've tried to work it out when it comes to us, that we are allowing the council member's office to have a courtesy copy of that, if that's the particular question.
Yeah, so what are the impediments to that then, for providing that information to council offices?
It just hadn't been put in place before, but now when we get them, we reach out to your office. We figure out what council district it is, and we should be reaching out to your office to let you know that we got it. And if that's not happening, please let me know.
Okay. So I don't know if dating were filed in my district in the last, I guess, 3 months. I'm unsure, but
Yeah.
I will be reaching out to find out. So along the same lines, what do you do with this information once you get it? Like once you are, I guess, served or whatever, receive the petition, what does the law department do with that petition, that information?
I think that's Jim Swallock's group that gets the 135s. Yeah. I'm going to call up my chief of staff, Sam Scavuzzo, who came from our tax unit.
Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, Sam Scavuzzo. I used to be in the tax unit, so I would handle these cases on occasion. So it would kind of depend on whether or not there was any city debt. Usually a property in this situation might have some back taxes. So we would kind of work to ensure that the city's credit, the debt obligations are honored. We wouldn't necessarily enter ourselves as parties to these cases, but we would monitor them and make sure that opposing counsel or the petitioner for the conservatorship is working in the best interest for the city, the neighborhood, to take off the blighted property and restore it to good use, and to make sure the city would get paid on its debt obligations as well.
Has the city ever filed to intervene in a matter, in a conservatorship matter?
I don't know the answer to that question, council member.
Has the city ever filed a petition to be appointed the conservator over a particular property?
From the conservatorship, I've only experienced it myself in the debt perspective, so I would have to follow up and get you an answer to that question, council member.
And I guess how can I say this, right? If it's a policy of the city, if council agrees that this is something that the city needs to, I guess, be more present in, that the city needs to follow up on these matters a little bit more presently, is the law department opposed to affirmatively intervening in or filing petitions in Act 135 matters that city council deems needs to be in the, that it has to protect the best interest of the city, according to what district council members particularly understand?
This is the first time that has been asked of me personally, so I will follow up with your office and we can have a discussion about that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
You're welcome. The chair recognizes Councilmember Isaiah Thomas.
Good morning, Council. Good afternoon, Council President. I'll be very brief. First of all, I just want to say congratulations again, and thank you to you personally. I know the great work that you've done specifically around the driving equality legislation. I'll also say that when I first came in City Council, I was one of those council members who was very skeptical about the relationship between the city solicitor and the admin. And not that you've been in this position for a long time to be able to speak to that dilemma with any substance, but I do have a lot of faith and confidence that you'll be able to balance both based on the work that you've done in the past and how closely you've worked with my team in my office as well. So thank you so much for what you've done, and congratulations. Just one or two quick questions. The mayor has a compliance lawyer in the MDO, in the MDO's office for her staff. What will be that focus? Why would the admin need a compliance lawyer that's different than the work that the city solicitor's office does? And what would be the focus of that particular position that's different than the legal support that your office provides?
I think you're talking about a compliance position funded by MDO that has to, it's funded by MDO, but it sits in my department, has to do with the American Disabilities Act. So this is actually a new position that we've created. I think it's funded by the Streets Department. There are a lot of ADA issues that come up in right-to-way and homeless services, and so we've consolidated all the different ADA issues into this one position that's being funded through the MDO's office.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you again.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Welcome. Any other questions or comments from members of this committee?
Follow up.
The chair recognizes Councilmember Jay Young.
Thank you, Mr. President. And on a similar line of questions to Councilmember Thomas' question, the mayor's office also has a chief legal counsel position. Could you tell us what the role of that particular individual is versus what the role and advice that the law department plays?
Kristen Bray is the chief, and she still reports to me. So she is on the org chart as reporting to me. She is building out Philly Stat, which I think you heard about this morning, and you should definitely ask her for a deep dive. But she is assisting primarily in the mayor's office on that. She's also helping with our encampments because she is the resident expert on encampments. But she has a dual role from the law department and as a director. There is a provision in the city charter that essentially lets the different departments loan out. And so she's on loan to the mayor's office, but still reports to me.
Is she in the law department's budget or the mayor's office budget?
She's moved to the mayor's office budget, which is not uncommon. We have lawyers on different budgets. We have DHA's budget, we have water budget, we have airport budget. We have lawyers on budget through that mechanism, through the charter where we're kind of loaning out. Revenue is also all in the revenues budget.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Any of my members need an extra lawyer? Y'all good? You need a couple? All right. Ms. Garcia, listen, we look forward to continuing working with you to move the city of Philadelphia forward. Again, congratulations. Keep up the good work. I'm also give you kudos for my colleague, Councilman Jamie Gaudier, hard work you did to help her. And so just keep fighting a good fight. We look forward to working with you, okay?
Thank you, Council President. Thank you, Council. We appreciate your support.
You're welcome. At this time, the Chair recognizes Councilmember Isaiah Thomas for a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Council President. I move that the committee of the whole stands in recess until Wednesday morning, April 17th at 10 a.m.
It has been moved and properly seconded that the meeting and the bills and resolutions before the committee today stand in recess until Wednesday, April the 17th, 2024 at 10 a.m. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the ayes have it, and the meeting is adjourned.